Okay, I am here, and we don't need any introduction to where I'm at. This is the 17th Connecticut Volunteer Infantry Monument here on Barlow's Knoll. I want to talk a little bit about the action of the 17th Connecticut here on July 1st, 1863. To set the table, on July 1st, 1863, the 1st and 11th Corps were the fighting forces here in Gettysburg. The 11th Corps, of course, in this position here, um, over toward that area there where Oak Ridge is. And then there was a gap in between them and the First Corps, who was on the western end of town over by McPherson's barn. And there was this gap in between the 1st and 11th Corps that was a problem, along with the problem that was created when General John Fulton Reynolds was killed on the edge of McPherson's Woods. When he was killed, automatically command went to Doubleday, who wasn't expecting that command, and command of a wing of the Army also went to Oliver Otis Howard, who was in command of the 11th Corps. So his attentions were also divided, and his responsibilities were divided as well. And sometimes I think he gets an unfair shake when it comes to his 11th Corps being routed and chased through the town. Now, as the fighting began on the morning of July 1st, Oliver Howard's 11th Corps marched into the field of battle to the right of the 1st Corps. Now, due to artillery that was posted on Oak Ridge, over in that direction there where the 90th PA Monument and the Eternal Light Peace Memorial, especially on the hill there where the Eternal Light Peace Memorial sits, due to the Confederate artillery on Oak Ridge, a gap divided the 1st and 11th Corps. Now, the 17th Connecticut were a part of Francis Barlow's division, and we did videos on Francis Barlow, as well as the Barlow-Gordon incident, and also Barlow's Knoll, that you'll want to go back and watch. They were part of Francis Barlow's division, and they advanced here to Blotcher's Knoll. Now, this was called Blotcher's Knoll at the time of the battle. It would later get its name from the brave commander, Francis Barlow. The regiment, being the 17th Connecticut, was led by a Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Fowler. And Douglas Fowler was a very kind man. He had the respect and love and admiration of his men, and they respected him back. And it was very uncommon for officers to fraternize with their troops during the Civil War. Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Fowler was the exception to the rule. He often encouraged his men. He often would speak with men who were just enlisted men, and not just officers. And he came here to Gettysburg on July 4th riding a white horse, and he looked very gallant, and he began to talk to his men, encourage his men, and in a joking way, standing just in here, about 10 feet from this monument, somewhere in this direction here, he said to his boys, dodge the big ones, boys. In other words, when the shell and shot started coming, he asked his men in a joking manner not to forget to dodge the big ones. And of course, just seconds later, a shell slammed into his head, decapitating him in front of his men. Right after that, rebels slammed into the 11th Corps on their unprotected flank and forced them to retreat into the town toward East Cemetery Hill, in that direction there where they had come from just a couple hours before. Now, the 17th Regiment has two monuments here in Gettysburg. They have this one here on Barlow's Knoll, Blotcher's Knoll, and then they have another one on East Cemetery Hill. Now, on July 2nd, the 17th Connecticut was in the defense of East Cemetery Hill when both Law and Hayes brigades slammed into East Cemetery Hill, including the Louisiana Tigers. In fact, where the other 17th monument sits on the edge of East Cemetery Hill is about the spot where the Louisiana Tigers had their flag captured. And I don't know if people were aware of that or not, but So they were involved very heavily on the 1st and the 2nd day of July of 1863. Both of their monuments were dedicated on June the 24th, 1884. So they were amongst some of the earlier monuments that were placed here on the battlefield. And this monument here commemorates a lot of the men who are dead and died in the battle, including Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Fowler, who was killed just about 10 feet from where this monument sits today. And that is why today, when I seen the car roll into the side of this monument, and things began to go in my mind, and even after seeing the lady and that she seemed to be a very nice person, I also realized that there was an accident, and that this monument right here, as a lot of the other monuments, were placed by the veterans. They were placed by men who suffered through this battle, this enormous tragic battle of Gettysburg. Both Union and Confederate regiments came back to this field, the survivors, and set these monuments in places where they fought, in places where their comrades had died. And we have them here with us today. And I can go up to this monument right now, and I can touch it, and I can touch the same monument that the veterans of the 17th Connecticut touched. I can pay honor to Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Fowler, as I'm sure the men did not too long after they dedicated the monument, remembering the horror of what happened to him. So when this car today hit this monument over here, and it didn't do a lot of damage, you can see some scuff marks on it where it went up on it. And there is previous damage that was on this monument before, like chips here. And I also noticed some chipping off of the letters on the back side of the monument. But it is important that we do what we can to preserve and protect these monuments and be on watch for them. When that person was trying to drag the monument, or the car rather, off of the monument, I politely went up to them and said, you know, you shouldn't do that, and you're not allowed to do that. I mean, once a monument is struck, it is your duty, it is my duty, it is anyone's duty to at least notify the National Park Service so that they can come out, they can check it out, they can assess the damage, and they can file a report. You know, if you just take a car and pull it away and somebody else was to drive by, take a picture of your car, your tag, and then report it, that's leaving the scene of an accident. It's also a federal crime since this is a national park, it's federal land. So I know in my heart what I did was not only right for the person that had the accident, but it was also in honor to the men of the 17th Connecticut, because this monument is still here, it is undamaged, and it is my job to protect it. Again, this has been a video on the monument of the 17th Connecticut, their actions, and before I end, also the flagpole that sits here that many people just pass by is also a part of the tribute to the 17th Connecticut. And very often people come up here on Barlow's Knoll, and they just ride around the circle here and they notice the flagpole, but what they usually don't do is walk out and go around it. And this does mention erected by the 17th Connecticut Volunteers Association right on the flagpole. So the 17th Connecticut will be immortalized here at Gettysburg with two monuments, and of course the beautiful flagpole that sits here on Barlow's, which was Blotcher's Knoll at the time of the battle. This has been the 17th Connecticut Volunteers on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.